This was so great the first time I played it. It was easily my favorite DS game for a long time. Unfortunately, when you've played it as many times as I have, the cracks start to show and it loses some of the appeal. Come on, I'll tell you all about it. And by the time we're done, maybe you'll understand why so many people keep hoping for a fourth game in the series. Final Fantasy Tactics. To the numerically inclined, it's a wonderfully addictive series that's been drawing players into its world of Ivalice since 1997, with the first Tactics game on the PlayStation.
Welcome to Squaresoft's Game of War. Final Fantasy Tactics.
I'll never forget that Christmas vacation when my dad took me to Walmart with a couple 20s and holiday money. I picked up the greatest hits editions of Final Fantasy IX and Tactics for just $20 each, and for a week I did nothing but alternate between the two every few hours or so. It was one of the best holiday vacations of my life. And how couldn't it be? Tactics is great. Sure, the translation is lousy. In fact, it can be downright awful at times. But I still prefer the original release over War of the Lions, the updated PSP release. I bought it back in the day, and the slowdown on spells and abilities was so bad that I returned it. You can fix it with a fan patch on an ISO, but I still don't prefer it. I think the retranslated script is exhausting to comprehend sometimes. It's written in that ye old medieval style, and unless you're a frequent visitor to the Renaissance Fair, some lines might take a second read to fully understand. Govern your tongue? I'm sorry, but I just can't take that line seriously. What was wrong with mind your tongue? You've heard of overacting, well this is overwriting.
You may call me Ritz, but you may not use my sword, spells, or magic without asking. They are dangerous. If you call, I'll explain.
6 years later, in 2003, we got Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, and this one is not for me. Gone are the themes of political intrigue, betrayal, and just copious amounts of death from the first game. Now it's bullies picking on a weak kid during a snowball fight. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Square wanted to release a kid-friendly Tactics on the hot handheld console at the time. And I must say, Advance does have an amazing opening hour. These kids hanging out in this amazingly well-detailed room just fills me with all kinds of warmth. And the opening cinematic has all these shots of a pixel-animated snowy town at night. Nighttime, snow, pixel animation, these are a few of my favorite things. But then the game starts proper and, well, there goes the snowy aesthetic I like so much. Hang on, I have to place locations myself? And I get treasures if I place them in a special order? Well, now you've got me worried that I'm gonna miss out on stuff if I use this bizarre mechanic that I've never been exposed to incorrectly. Really keeping me on my toes at the outset, huh? This equipment shop is in desperate need of a fitting room, and oh my god, these are the slowest battles I've ever experienced. Attacking from the front only has a 50% chance of hitting, with 75% from the sides. That's needlessly frustrating. The first Tactics taught us that attacking from the back and sides was ideal, without tanking the hit chance. This change makes these already slow battles downright intolerable. I know there are people that have fond memories of this game, hell even one of my buddies likes it, so I'll just leave it with a charitable rating of... not for me. No, I wouldn't find my next tactical addiction until 2008, with the release of Final Fantasy Tactics A2 on the Nintendo DS. Obviously they couldn't call it Advance anymore, but still wanted to tie it into the previous game somehow, hence the A in A2. You start out as Luso Clemens, a spunky kid with a little attitude and a penchant for being late to school. Well, his teacher Mr. Blair has had enough, and on the last day of school before summer vacation, he sentences Luso to clean the library. He accepts his punishment and enters the library to find a strange book with half-blank pages. Well, I never pass up on the chance to write in a library book. Alright kid, I'm starting to think you deserve whatever ironic punishment is coming your way. He signs his name in the book, and suddenly this becomes a story all about how his life got flip-turned upside down. Immediately upon his arrival in the land of Ivalice, Luso finds himself staring at the maw of Big Mama Cockatrice. Cid, the leader of a small group, quickly offers to induct Luso into his clan and place him under the protection of their judge, a magical construct that keeps death from sticking to those under its watch, provided they follow its rules. More on that later. Luso, finding himself with little choice, swears an oath to the clan's judge and earns himself its protection along with some new duds. Look, kid, I know you didn't get much choice in your battle attire here, and I'm willing to cut you a little bit of slack for that, but not so much that I'm not gonna point and laugh. Also, I have no idea what this sword is. I've played this game a bunch of times and beaten it twice, and I have never seen this weapon in game. I have seen it in Threads of Fate, however, and frankly, I think Rue wielded it better. From here, the story pretty much takes a back seat. Cid promises to help Luso find a way back to his world, but until then you just kinda help the clan with whatever quests need done. It's a shame we went from such a gripping story in the first Tactics to what now seems to be an afterthought, a story that had to be there to move the game along. You get some moments that appear to be the starts of interesting stories, like Cid getting shot by an old associate, or the story behind why judges exist, but they either never go anywhere or get hand-waved away like nothing. It gets so bad that after your first battle with Eilua, A2's closest thing to a main antagonist, you're told by the obligatory wise man of the world to do as you will, meet those you will, live life, for life lived is the source of the book's power. He's basically telling Luso that his purpose in this world is to just keep engaging with it. I can practically hear the writer saying, look, we're sorry, we know the plot isn't exactly gripping, okay? This is the best we could do. Just keep playing the game until the credits roll, alright? It's not all bad though. The story may be an afterthought, but that doesn't mean the dialogue isn't well written. There's a great dynamic between Luso and Cid, with Luso's childlike enthusiasm and real-world English mannerisms being balanced out by Cid's down-to-earth attitude and sophisticated style of speaking. Evilesian, if you will. Harumph. Spoken like a true greenhorn. Anybody that says harumph is okay in my book. His dialogue is easily the best, and it makes him my favorite character. He's so stern and grouchy, but he portrays it in a charming way. As for Lady Thief Adele, be gone, fucks! She does become a lot more tolerable around the middle of the game, though she does fall into the old anime trope of character with troubled past and hidden power, and even that doesn't get much exposure in the main story. So if you're not playing A2 for the story, what are you playing it for? The answer is side quests. Lots and lots of side quests. Good lord, just look at all these. These side quests are like hydras. Finish one and 3 more take its place. And while there are plenty that are pretty uninteresting, there are just as many that are like self-contained mini-stories. The cockatrice that you chase off at the beginning comes back in a quest chain involving House Bowen, another clan. Then there's the Prima Donna questline, and the Moogle Rangers, which was pretty wacky, helping the Bonga Bugle with different articles every month, or helping a green mage impress her father by desperately trying to keep a pet dragon under control. And this is nowhere near all of the more crafted questlines. They do a pretty great job of making this iteration of Ivalice feel populated, and that's part of what makes it so memorable. The main quest may be ho-hum, but I'll always smile whenever I come across a side quest that I recognize. Though it is pretty annoying how accepted quests are on a time limit to finish. Moving around different zones on the world map makes days pass by, and not paying attention can lead to a quest timing out and needing to be accepted again, provided it's not a quest that's only available on certain months. So while you can have a maximum of 15 accepted at a time, I never took more than 1 or 2 out of fear of timing them out. You can dispatch clanmates to do quests on their own, and that's good for the boring ones, but you won't know what those are unless you've played before. Also, dispatching seems to have hidden preferences on the units you send, regardless of level. If a unit starts jumping up and down, it's well suited, but if they hang their head in shame, they'll increase the chances of failure. It's kind of a pain. The other main appeal of A2 is building up your clan into powerful fighters that can take on any task. This aspect is extremely addictive, as is customary for the genre. A2 brings back the ability learning mechanic from FF9. Equipment can have passive and active abilities that will be permanently learned after earning enough AP through completed quests. And the amount of abilities and equipment here is staggering. If you want to fill up your units with a bunch of cool abilities, you're going to want all the AP you can get, which is a problem since side quests only give a paltry 30. The cheapest abilities take 100 AP to learn, and those are rare. Most of them take around 150 to 300 to 990 for the ninja's dual wield, because 999 would have been too excessive. I can sense the people that have played this nodding their heads in approval, and they probably already know what I'm about to say next. If you want to learn these abilities in any kind of timely manner, you're going to need to always be using the bonus AP3 clan perk, which boosts the 30 you get from side quests to 90. But in order for this perk to stay active, you must follow Every quest has a law that you have the option of following. Sometimes they're inconsequential, like don't use ranged weapons or a certain element. Other times they're a lot more trouble than they're worth, like only moving one space every turn or not attacking weaker units. When a law is just too annoying to follow, go ahead, be a rebel. Just because something is against the law, it doesn't mean it's wrong, but be warned, you'll lose your clan perk, the ability to revive units, and any rewards you'd get for being a law-abiding citizen. But these are rarely worth it. Most of the time, I like the law system. It adds another degree of thought and strategy to what would otherwise be pretty straightforward battles. But any law that requires changing your party's equipment or skills needs to go. I've told you how to keep your bonus AP perk active, but I haven't told you how to get it. That involves clan trials, and I think Square dropped the ball a bit here. Trials boost your clan talents, which is a really underbaked system that you'll almost never need to worry about. It just blocks off certain side quests until specific talents are high enough. Trials also give you titles, which boost buying and selling at the shop, and the all-important clan perks. The problem is that you aren't told which trials give which perks. It feels like Square wanted players doing every single one of these trials, and they aren't really interesting enough to warrant that. In fact, some of them are downright frustrating, like trying to examine a pot a bunch of times while enemies that can confuse or petrify you are flying around. Basically, I'm saying, it's dangerous to go alone. So take this. These days you could do a quick Google search and find exactly the right trial you need, but this strategy guide is pretty legit. The section on all the races and jobs is fun to read, and you get a nice little section showing exactly what clan trials to do for which perks. Like here, AP up 3, negotiation teamwork, advocates. Let's talk about jobs. There's quite the selection, and not all are created equal. I got a ton of use out of the fighter job and its aura blast ability. Definitely one of the best moves in the game. As for the Moogle's Animist, it's pointless. I barely got any instruments in my 50 hours of playtime to teach it abilities. It seems to exist just as a stepping stone to the more interesting jobs. In order to access new jobs, you first need to complete certain side quests that unlock them, and then you need to learn a certain amount of abilities with your current jobs. Say you wanted the Numo's Arcanist job, then you'd first need to master 2 Time Mage abilities. This raises an issue because jobs don't just have their own accessible equipment and abilities, they also have their own stat growth, something that the game doesn't make clear. For example, the Moogle Knight has A-rank stat growth in both attack and defense, but to unlock that job you need to master 1 Animist ability, and the Animist has terrible stat growth in everything. This means that ideally you'd want to leave a unit on the bench until it learns all the stuff it needs to access a certain job, so that it doesn't level up and stunt its stat growth. And that can take a while for some of the fancier jobs like Ninja or Illusionist. Again, I'm saying it's dangerous to go alone, so take this. Let's get back to how not all jobs are created equal. Yeah, there are definitely some dominant strategies that are just too powerful to go without. For example, the Ranger's Mirror Items ability is incredible for being able to turn an X potion into a guaranteed 200 damage nuke. The Paraver's Unburdened Soul ability is fantastic for its ability to fully heal and cleanse your entire party, but equip him with an accessory that grants re-raise once and you won't even have to pay the cost with his life. Putting enemies to sleep gives all attacks and skills a 100% chance of hitting the target. Very useful for Dragoons using jump or stealing high-value bizarre items. More on that later. Alchemists are pretty great too. They have the inherent ability to use items, freeing up their secondary ability slot and giving them a ton of versatility. Also, they can do this. You know a spell is good when it tanks the frame rate. Blue mages are one of my favorite aspects of the Final Fantasy games that have them. You know, learning unique enemy abilities once they get used on a unit with Learn equipped. I wound up making Luso a ninja that used the enemy skill Sandstorm to damage and blind enemies for a really cheap cost. Basically, I turned him into Gara. One of my favorite strategies was equipping my summoner with the Blood Price passive ability to make all of her spells use HP instead of MP. This is great since MP starts out at 0 in every battle, slowly charging at intervals of 10 every turn unless boosted with clan perks or abilities. I would then summon Kieran at the start of every battle to give my whole party regen, which never goes away unless it's dispelled by an enemy. So not only would my whole party get easy healing every turn, but my summoner would be able to use powerful summons every turn without much of a cost. I got a ton of mileage out of this combo.
Final Fantasy Tactics A2 風穴のグリモア
Tactics A2 gives so many tools and possibilities for game-changing combos if you're a clever player, but it takes so long for the game to reach that point, and one of the reasons for that is the Bazaar. You get loot items from slain monsters, thievery, and finishing quests. These can be traded into the Bazaar to unlock new equipment, but it's another occasion of the game not telling you what you're gonna get until it's too late. Many times I blew high-value loot items on equipment that didn't have any abilities to learn at all. And of course, using loot in this way means you can't sell it, and gil can be extremely tight for a lot of the game. Some people might find the mystery of an unknown weapon exciting. Me, I'd rather know what I'm investing in. Another reason it takes forever for the game to get interesting is, well, it's just really slow paced. You have to always be doing side quests to keep up with the leveling curve, since there aren't nearly enough story quests to keep your party strong. And when you're facing your 100th quest with damage sponge enemies and a tedious law that you gotta follow because you really want that extra AP, I'll bet money that you'd be mentally checked out too. Forcing yourself to play a game that you've burned out on is like trying to play League of Legends, and that's just terrible. That's why it's time for a Skeleton's Guide on how to properly enjoy Final Fantasy Tactics A2 in game show host voice. Wait, I'm not supposed to say that part. First, just play it on an emulator. I was fortunate to pick up my copy for just 20 bucks, but you're not gonna find it online for that price these days. More importantly, emulation gives you the option to speed up tedious fights. I play on RetroArch and I have it set up so all I have to do is press down on the touchpad on my DualShock 4 to roughly double the speed. I love having this option. Fast forwarding is a great way to make what were once agonizingly slow games at least 10 times more tolerable. Even Square understood the wisdom in this by adding a fast forward option to World of Final Fantasy. I really enjoyed that game, and a big part of that enjoyment was being able to quickly get through cringy dialogue or inconsequential fights. Second, you can devote your full attention to the first 10 hours or so while you're learning the ropes, but after that, it's time to turn on a show or a movie. A2 simply isn't a game that requires your laser-focused attention most of the time, so take the opportunity to watch something while playing.
Retractable nipples, located just inside the anus.
Oh man, I love this show. I'm being totally serious with this advice. I've burned out and quit on this game more times than I've beaten it. It's just too much of the same gameplay spread over too much time. And if you're the kind of person that doesn't like to devote their full attention to a show, then A2 is perfect for keeping your hands and mind busy. There is, however, one exception. If you've never played before, then I highly recommend experiencing story quests and some of the more interesting side quests normally. Otherwise, you're gonna miss out on the exceptional soundtrack. Some of Hitoshi Sakamoto's best work. You know, the guy most well known for his work on Gradius 5 and Super Back to the Future 2. Oh, and he also composed the other two Tactics, Final Fantasy 12, and a bunch of other games. But for real, yeah, this dude really gets around. I had no idea that he composed for some of Vanillaware's games, like Odin Sphere and Dragon's Crown. I've always been a strong believer that nothing connects a person to a game more than a powerful soundtrack. I've had the OST downloaded for years, but I figured I own the game and the guide, might as well pick up the physical soundtrack to complete the set. Now you might be thinking, how impressive could the music possibly be? There's no way Square would commit much budget to the soundtrack of a DS game. Oh, you think so? granted, what you're hearing are the higher quality recordings from the album, but the DS's sound capabilities aren't too shabby at playing these orchestrated tracks. There's one theme in particular I'd like to discuss, and that's the main theme. Not the one that plays on the title screen, but the one that comes right after starting a new game. It's such a warm and comforting track that hits hard right off the bat, like Dearly Beloved from Kingdom Hearts. It makes for an incredible first impression, and it's a tune that gets used a few other occasions throughout the game, including the ending. The story of A2 isn't nearly strong enough to warrant the kind of emotions that this ending track invokes. You might say that Sakamoto's incredible work filled in the holes left behind by the writers. In that way, this soundtrack is the perfect complement to A2. And I must admit something, it hit me harder than most, because about halfway through my playthrough, which has to be like, geez, my 6th at this point, I decided that this would be my final time with A2, and this video would be my heartfelt farewell to a game that, while flawed in some ways, it's still one of my favorites. A2, much like most DS games, is likely to stay forever locked on the system, never to see a re-release thanks to the obtuse dual-screen mechanic. But this doesn't mean there isn't hope for the Tactics series. In 2022, Tactics Ogre Reborn was released, and I'm convinced that it was intended to test the waters for interest in the genre. I haven't played it yet, but from some of the reviews I've read, there are a few changes that some people aren't down with. Perhaps we'll talk about it one day. Square Enix clearly is not the company they used to be, but if there's hope that they can deliver a fourth Tactics that doesn't just live up to, but surpasses the expectations of longtime fans, then I'll keep hanging on to that hope. However, in the likely event that they don't have the talent anymore to do it right, then I would just assume they not try. It doesn't matter how much money you throw at a project or how much it's desired by fans. If it doesn't have the right talent, heart, and soul behind it, then it will ultimately be a disappointment. Do it right, Square. Don't give me a reason to bring up this quote in a future video. Are you interested in Dragon Quest, Shmups, Pokemon, or Digimon? Then come on, check out my other videos. Don't just let them sit and gather dust. I'm currently in the middle of playing Dragon Quest V, so we can get to that soon. Thanks for watching. This is A Skeleton signing out.